What would you do if you had $50 million but couldn't spend a single day with your own children? Today I'm telling you the shocking true story of Marcus Chen, a tech billionaire who disguised himself as a woman, learned perfect English accent, and worked as his own children's nanny for 6 months. And what his kids said when they finally discovered the truth will leave you speechless. But first, let me tell you how this all started. Marcus Chen wasn't always desperate. 3 years ago, he was living the dream. His AI software company had just sold for $200 million. Penthouse apartment, private jets, the works. But there was one problem that all his money couldn't solve. His wife Sarah had filed for divorce, and she wanted full custody of their twins, Emma and Jake, who were only 7 years old. The divorce was brutal. Sarah's lawyer painted Marcus as an absent workaholic father who cared more about code than his children. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Marcus had missed birthdays, school plays, bedtime stories, all in the name of building his empire. But here's where it gets crazy. After the divorce, Sarah moved the kids to a different state and hired a full-time nanny. Marcus was allowed exactly 4 hours of supervised visits per month. 4 hours. Can you imagine? This man could buy anything in the world, but he couldn't buy time with his own children. For 8 months, Marcus tried everything. He hired the best lawyers, offered Sarah millions in additional settlement money, even bought the house next to theirs. Nothing worked. Sarah had one rule. The children needed stability, and Marcus wasn't stable enough to provide it. That's when Marcus came up with the most insane plan you've ever heard. If he couldn't see his kids as their father, he'd see them as someone else entirely. He was going to become their nanny. Now I know what you're thinking. How could a 6'2" tech billionaire possibly disguise himself as a nanny? Well, Marcus spent 3 months preparing for this role like it was a military operation. He lost 40 pounds, grew his hair out, learned to walk in heels, and hired a voice coach to perfect a British accent. He even studied child psychology and got legitimate nanny certifications online. The transformation was incredible. Marcus created an entire identity, Mary Sinclair, a 34-year-old nanny from London with impeccable references that he completely fabricated using his tech skills. But here's the kicker: if Sarah ever found out, she could have him arrested for fraud and ensure he'd never see his children again. Marcus was literally risking everything. The day of the interview, Marcus's hands were shaking so badly he could barely apply his makeup. Sarah had already gone through 12 nannies in 8 months. The kids were acting out, grades were dropping, and she was desperate. When Mary Sinclair walked into that house, Sarah was impressed immediately. Here was someone who spoke softly, had wonderful references, and most importantly, seemed to genuinely care about the children's well-being. What happened next will break your heart. For the first time in almost a year, Marcus got to spend real time with Emma and Jake. Not supervised visits with lawyers present, but actual father-child bonding, except they had no idea who he really was. He learned things about his children that he never knew. Emma was afraid of thunderstorms because she thought they sounded angry like Mommy and Daddy used to sound. Jake had been having nightmares about his dad disappearing forever. Both kids would ask Mary constantly about their father. Did she think he still loved them? Why didn't he want to see them more often? Marcus realized his children thought he had abandoned them by choice. For 6 months, Marcus lived this double life. During the day, he was the perfect nanny. He helped with homework, made elaborate lunches, and gave the best bedtime stories. The kids started calling him Nanny Mary, but with the kind of affection they'd never shown their real father. At night, he'd go home to his empty penthouse and cry, knowing that his children loved him more as a fake nanny than they ever had as their real dad. But Sarah was starting to get suspicious. Mary knew too much about the children's preferences, their habits, their favorite foods. She seemed to understand them in a way that was almost paternal. Then came the day that changed everything. Jake fell off his bike and broke his arm. At the hospital, he was crying and asking for his daddy. Marcus, still in his Mary disguise, couldn't take it anymore. His son was in pain and calling for him, but couldn't recognize him. That's when Marcus made a decision that would either reunite his family or destroy any chance he had left. In the hospital waiting room, With Jake asleep and Emma holding Mary's hand, Marcus slowly removed his wig, then the makeup. Then he spoke in his real voice and said, "Emma, sweetheart, it's me, it's Daddy." Emma's reaction was not what you'd expect. She didn't scream or run away. Instead, she looked at him for a long moment and said, "I knew it was you. You smell like Daddy's cologne and you make the same faces when you're worried." But Jake's reaction was different. When he woke up and saw his father instead of Mary, he felt betrayed. "You lied to me," he cried. "Mary was nice to me, but you were pretending." Sarah arrived at the hospital expecting to pick up her children and their nanny. Instead, she found her ex-husband holding their son while their daughter curled up in his lap. The jig was up. You'd expect Sarah to call the police, file charges, get a restraining order, but seeing her children's reaction to their father, seeing how much they needed him, she realized something important. The man who had spent 6 months caring for their children every day, who had learned their fears and their dreams, who had put their needs above his own pride and his own safety, that man was not the same absent workaholic she'd divorced. Here's what Marcus learned during those 6 months that changed everything. Being present isn't about the time you spend, it's about the attention you give during that time. As Mary, he had been 100% focused on his children in a way he never was as their wealthy, distracted father. Sarah agreed to joint custody on one condition. Marcus had to promise to be as present as a father as he had been as Mary. No phones during kid time, no work calls during homework, no choosing business over bedtime stories. Today, 3 years later, Marcus still keeps a photo of himself as Mary Sinclair on his desk. Not because he's proud of the deception, but because it reminds him of the most important lesson of his life. His children didn't need a millionaire father. They needed a present father. Emma, now 10, sometimes still calls him Daddy Mary when she wants extra attention. And Jake? He forgave his father, but made him promise to never lie to him again. A promise Marcus keeps every single day. This story teaches us that sometimes the things we think we've lost forever are actually right in front of us. We just need to be willing to see them differently. What's the most extreme thing you'd do for the people you love? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories about the lengths people go to for love. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story about the importance of being present, share this video with them.